Hello and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm your host, Kim Todd. We're back in our NET home after a really great time at Bayside Golf Course last week. So once again, we're going to be answering your gardening questions. You can get in touch with us by dialing 402-472-1212 if you live in Lincoln. Our toll-free number is 800-676-5446. If you'd like to send us an email or those pictures, that address is byf@unl.edu. We answer those on a future show. Tell us as much information as you can. Do not forget to tell us where you live. You can also get more information about Backyard Farmer during the week on our social media. That includes Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest. So Jonathan, you have a little soldier row of dead items.
I like them when they're lined up like this.
Dead.
They're dead, yeah. I was gonna put the live ones under our studio audience's chairs maybe. These ones are Carpenter bees. They are differentiated from the bumblebees, which they kind of look like because they don't have any hair on their rear end. They have this nice bald abdomen that you can kind of see here. It's very shiny and black. And then they kind of have this yellow fur on their thorax with a bald spot in the middle. They do drill really circular holes into wood. They prefer unpainted wood, but they will go through paint if they have to. They will also reuse holes that have been left behind by other carpenter bees. So what you want to do if you're seeing a lot of activity from these is get some dust insecticide into the tunnel that they've created. It'll coat the inside, and then as they crawl in and out of it, it'll take care of those live ones that are going in and out. Then you need to plug it maybe with some steel wool for right now. And then this fall you get a wooden dowel rod, plug it into there, saw it off and seal it up with wood putty so that nobody can reuse it hopefully next year.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work for some little bees. They are pollinators. If you really can stand to have holes drilled in a lot of your wooden surfaces, maybe you can live and let live, but otherwise it's probably best to try and control them.
Can they sting you?
They can sting, and they can sting dogs as well.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah, so you got to take care of them.
All right, thanks. All right, Bill, you have something.
Highly sophisticated.
A weapon.
Management tool. We've kind of been doing this kind of golf course theme. We did the pigments a couple weeks ago. We talked about soil moisture meters last week. And in honor of the U.S. Open, I wanted to show people what a stimp meter looks like. Stimp meter is something that we use to measure how fast the putting green is. And so it's nothing special. It's a rod that's about 3 feet long, 30 inches up from the end of it. There's a little notch here. In the notch goes a golf ball. And then it's pretty simple. See if Kim can catch. It goes to a certain height, and ball goes and drops like that. And then we just measure.
Par.
Yeah, then we measure how far the ball goes in each direction. We take the average, and that's how fast the green is. Really, it's a distance, it's not a speed. And so you might hear about, the greens were stimping 9 or 10 or 11 or 12. That's just what that means, and it's a really not sophisticated piece of equipment, originally designed to make sure that all the greens on a golf course were the same speed, but it's kind of been, inappropriately used now to say, oh, is the green fast or slow? And so ultimately, too, the speed at your golf course is dependent on if your greens are hilly or not. If they're flat, then faster is okay. If they're really hilly, then slower might be more appropriate. So let your superintendent and your golf pro kind of determine what's best for your course.
That's pretty fun, actually.
Yeah, you could catch.
I can catch.
Can you use it as a putter?
Maybe.
All right, Lauren, what rotten spot do we have today?
That's kind of hard to follow, but I brought along something that with all the rains we're seeing quite a bit of, and you're going to see a lot of defoliation as we go forward in your flowering crabapple trees, most likely. And this is scab on a crabapple. I don't know if we can get a close-up, and you can see already I got some yellow leaves that are coming out, just like you'll see particularly when we get a little bit later in the summer. And then those will just kind of curl up and fall off. And then the nice thing on this one, the really nice to me, is how much fruit infection we have already, which is pretty rare and really just indicating how favorable the environment is for scab this year. So this was in the Lincoln area, but anywhere that you have flowering crabapple trees that get frequent rains this time of year, if it's susceptible to scab, you're going to have a significant problem with it. So it's getting a little late for tree establishment, but if you are still in that market at all, make sure you get a resistant cultivar, because that is the #1 way to manage this. Otherwise, you're going to spray a lot of fungicides to try to control it.
All right, thank you, Lauren.
Scab.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Kelly, beauty on your end of the table.
Yes, beauty and aroma too, good aroma as well. If you're wondering what the trees that are blooming beautiful white panicles or clusters of flowers are right now, they are Japanese tree lilac. And it is a true lilac. You can tell by the leaf here, it's pretty much a lilac leaf. The flower looks a little bit different though, and it's kind of a creamy white. This is a tree, it gets about 20 to 30 foot tall if it's just the species itself. There is one called ivory silk that's supposed to be smaller, but it can still get about 25 feet tall. So even though it's considered a small ornamental tree, it's one of our larger small ornamental trees, so no 20 to 30 feet tall. It's a great tree. It hasn't been overplanted like so many of our flowering trees, especially ornamental pear, so it would add some diversity to the landscape. As a lilac, it's pretty resistant to the common lilac disease, what am I trying to think of? Powdery mildew, and as well as scab, not scab, you were just talking about scab, scales, I got it, scales and the borer. So it's pretty resistant to that, so it's a good tree to plant. Ivory silk is the most common cultivar, and as you can see, a lot of times with cultivars, they've been improved, so ivory silk has a much larger panicle or bloom. So, but Japanese tree lilac, if you're looking for a blooming tree about 30 foot tall, and ivory silk will only get about 25 foot tall. So even though it says it's smaller, it's still fairly large. So Japanese tree lilac.
Great, thanks, Kelly. All right, first set of questions come to you.
All right.
Oaks.
Oaks.
Many, many oak
The mighty
pictures.
tree.
Well, the first one is Burt County.
Okay.
She's got red and scarlet. They're established. They have curling leaves. Inside the curls, webs, mosquito-like insects, tiny round black spider-like things.
Okay.
What to do?
There's not a whole lot that is a problem here. Those leaves do look like they're curled over, perhaps from some sort of environmental problem, or maybe, I'm not sure why they're curled over, but a spider has taken advantage of that, it would look like, and has built their web in there. And those little mosquito-like things you're seeing could either be mosquitoes or midges, and that spider is chowing down on them. That would be what is going on there.
All right, and then I think you have a couple others here that we kind of batted back and forth.
Yeah, you and I chatted about this one. I don't see anything here that looks really insect related, in my opinion. I was looking to see if there was some caterpillar feeding or sawfly feeding. This looks more like maybe hail damage to me, or maybe even herbicide damage. Is that something you'd agree with?
I would.
Okay.
And we've seen that on campus a fair amount too.
I know.
Not the hail, but the
Yeah, I know the oaks are pretty susceptible to that.
Right.
And then these other ones, we've got some jumping oak galls that are causing this cupping that we're seeing on the leaves, as well as all those little dots and divots. This is something that it's not going to cause a lot of problems for the tree. It is a cosmetic issue, especially with this second image, this fourth image here. That's a lot of galls in that picture. So maybe prune out some of the really heavily infested ones right now and destroy them. And then this fall, make sure you rake everything up and destroy those leaves in some fashion, and that should cut down on the population for next year. But there's not really any insecticides that are going to help you to take care of those little wasps that are in there.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. All right, I know you guys batted this one back and forth, Bill and Lauren, which is great. This is a Lincoln resident, primarily Zoysia, except for the shaded areas. Came out of dormancy and noted these small areas that were not greening up. So various distances for the photos. He's wondering what is going on so that he might be able to treat if necessary.
So we've gone back and forth with this. Honestly, from the pictures, it's really hard to know exactly what that could be. One thing that happens in zoysia grass when the soil is really wet in the spring and the fall is it can get a disease called large patch. And so we generally know that if too much fertilizer is applied when cool, wet weather in the fall, the infection can start, and then the grass just doesn't green up. And so this is a really big problem in like Missouri and in Kansas. And so with the wet weather that we had the last fall and then again this spring, it is possible that that's what it would be. And so we were saying, send a sample into the diagnostic lab. Unfortunately, though, if it would be large patch, nothing we're going to really do now, that the damage has really been done. The zoysia will slowly fill back in. But if you are going to sample, make sure you take a sample right on the margin of the affected and the not affected, the healthy foliage, because they're going to look at that level at the roots to see if they see that problem from that rhizoc disease.
All right, thanks, Bill. So your favorite tree questions, Lauren. You're such a tree guy.
Where's my chainsaw?
I know you have trees in your landscape. This
I
is
can't wait till something goes wrong so I can saw them down.
Yeah, Ron. So this is a Kennesaw viewer. She has she thinks it's a fir or a spruce. It's done very well, but then it's got these drooping brown tips. She's wondering, is this a disease? And then you've got a second, which is a Blair viewer with a Norway spruce that has the tip browning as well.
There's a couple things here. One is it can depend a little bit on distribution on this, but if you see just little pockets of this, I believe this is Pseudococcus blight, which is a fungus that infects the newer growth at the end. So one thing you could do at this time of year is just prune that affected area out. And then next year, when they are just starting to elongate and earlier on, you could apply a fungicide if it was severe. But I would not recommend treating until it was advanced if you're just seeing a few small shoots of it.
All right,
So
thanks, Lauren.
Pseudococcus, you could look it up.
Pseudococcus with a C?
S.
S. All right, okay.
S-I-R-O-C-U-S.
Say it louder.
I'm not sure, I'm not a very good speller.
And Google is not helping right now, right? Okay. All right, Kelly,
Google.
this is a tree wrap damage question for you. The tree was planted about 2 years ago, did not remove the support. Wonders if this tree is compromised.
Well, it's definitely compromised because it looks, by the photo, it looks like it's at least a half-inch deep, if not even an inch deep. And trees do not heal. They seal, even though it's not an open wound or anything like that. There's a major constriction there of the cambium layer of the tree. So it is compromised, and since it's not that large of a tree, I would replace it if that's an option. Would be the ideal thing down the road because trees live for a long time, and you want to prepare for that. So ideally, I would replace it. Yeah, or I mean, if they wait and see, but it could even increase the risk that that would break off in the wind at that point.
All right.
The larger
time
it
for a
gets.
new tree. All right, thanks, Kelly.
And Kim, that is S-I-R-O-C-O-C-C-U-S.
Thank you.
Pseudococcus.
I was going to spell it.
Spelling bee champion.
Thank you,
There you go.
Google. All right, well, a few years ago, Raising Nebraska was built to showcase our crops that feed the world, as well as native and adapted ornamentals and grasses that really make our state beautiful. Elizabeth took some time to show you a few of the flowers you'll want to see at this year's State Fair.
We're located out at Fauner Park, home of the Nebraska State Fair. And in the landscape bed we have right here, we have a bunch of early blooming wildflowers and pro-pollinator plants. Some of the ones that are early blooming, we have some of our showy milkweed that it colonizes and it kind of takes over the landscape bed. We've got our white blooming baptisia that's going to bloom really white, makes a nice, dense, rounded, almost hedge-like pom-pom. And then those flowers are followed by black seed pods. So come State Fair, come out here and look and see what those black seed pods look like. And then back here we have the All-America Selection Husker Red Penstemon. This is bred by U&L, and it's got this lovely red foliage followed by these white flowers. Husker Red Penstemon is an older variety that's out there. There's a newer one on the market called Dark Towers, but bees really love this, and they'll come in and they'll pollinate these little guys and then they'll seed everywhere. So we've got some really nice early seasoned pollinator plants. Those of you that visit the Backyard Farmer Garden Rain Chain might notice and recognize the Golden Alexander. It's an early season bloomer that attracts a lot of pollinators, and right now it's covered with a bunch of wasps and bees, so they're really attracted to that bright yellow color. Another flower that's going to be blooming later on in the season is going to be the liatris, and it's going to be blooming those beautiful magenta purple spikes here as we start to get towards summer. A few other plants that are going to take their time and be ready later on in the season is going to be the cup plant. It doesn't look like much right now, but just give it the summer and it'll get that 3 to 6 foot tall and have those yellow blooms on it. The echinacea is just now starting to set its flower, and by the end of summer, it's going to be in its full glory. And then lastly, the monarda or the bee balm is starting to bloom right now. Come summer, it's going to start to fade, and some of these other plants are going to start to take over. So be sure to visit this planting bed and the other beds out here at Fauner Park during the Nebraska State Fair when they're going to be in their full glory and blooming.
Really nice to see those beautiful flowers already blooming out there, and we do expect to see all of you at our annual State Fair show coming up in August. You know, for most of the show's history, Backyard Farmer has enjoyed a great relationship with our NET partners. We've been able to help thousands of gardeners across the state grow their own food, make their lawns and gardens beautiful. And the reason we can do this for so long is because of generous donations by our loyal audience. So let's take a few minutes to hear how you can keep Backyard Farmer and many other great programs on the air.
Thanks, Kim. We're just about a third of the way through another Backyard Farmer episode. The Nebraska Extension experts are helping us all with our lawn, garden, and tree concerns. Week in and week out, for more than 60 years, Backyard Farmer on NET has come to your home to help you with all kinds of advice. You help by providing financial support. Your contribution ensures that great informational programs like Backyard Farmer keep coming to Nebraskans like you who are passionate about their yards and gardens. During this member drive, we have some great thank you gifts when you contribute to NET. When you become a member and call in at the $7 monthly level, we'll be happy to send you the Backyard Farmer Gardening Tool Kit. That is a new offering we have. That kit includes a gardening tote bag and 3 tools to help your garden grow and thrive. At the $45 level of membership, you can take a choice of the Backyard Farmer Combination Kneeling Pad Seat Cushion or the Backyard Farmer Rain Gauge. Both of them very handy and allow you to display your support of Backyard Farmer and NET. How do you become a supporter? How do you take advantage of these great thank you gifts? Dial 1-800-989-8236 or go online to netnebraska.org/donate. Now, Kim, whoa! Kim snuck up here. You know, you said for most of our history we've gotten along well.
Well, you know, I'm not old enough to know all of it.
Okay. Excellent. That just caught my eye there. Backyard Farmer began in 1953. We say mythologically that is the longest continuously running local television show in television history.
It is.
And you
Absolutely.
can vouch for that.
Totally, because I am that old also.
It's quite a tradition. And it shows that Nebraskans, first of all, like gardening, but they really like to learn about gardening on television.
And from somebody that is public, and this is science-based, and we have so much fun.
That's
and
true.
every year we start having more and more fun, both with you guys and, of course, sitting up there.
And because we don't have commercials, you are not beholden to push one product or another. You're about the science behind how to garden, how to grow trees, how to take care of those bugs and insects.
Exactly, and even those dogs that actually have visited the studio tonight, which our audience probably can't see, but might have those dog spots in the yard.
You know, I was thinking about asking you about that. We have a prop, a dog in the studio right now, so we could do a demonstration. But those little yellow stains in the springtime that are just polka dotted?
That would be Bill. He can answer that question later.
Okay, I'll get a hint later. No matter what your question is, they welcome letters, cards, phone calls, any way you want to contact Backyard Farmer. We have volunteers off of the studio who take your calls every week. And tonight we're joined by a studio audience who are made up of supporters of NET. They are the current members of NET. And we're asking them tonight to join that group by becoming the newest supporter.
Absolutely, and you know, the number of questions we get is growing exponentially. We reach a huge number of audiences every single week. And our Backyard Farmer garden has just become kind of a go-to place. So again, the NET partnership allows us to do what we do best through you guys.
And you got your signs out now too, I see.
Yes, we do.
If you are near the East Campus, you can take a look at the Backyard Farmer Garden, a wonderful tradition. We want to keep this tradition strong for many, many years or decades to come, because I don't think gardening will ever go out of style. And what I've learned is that every year in Nebraska, it's a different set of challenges.
Totally.
Insects and flooding and
Exactly.
ash borers and you name it. You've got an endless list of topics.
Exactly, and every single year we have a new audience anyway.
Does the science change?
It does, absolutely.
So there is research and discoveries going on all the
Absolutely.
time. And
Yep.
that occurs on this campus?
Absolutely, yep, and all over the state.
All over the state. You have extension offices?
You bet, all over the state.
It's a wonderful partnership. You are supporting something that you can take advantage of every single day. You can see what your dollars do when you tune in and watch Backyard Farmer. It's not the only program on our air, but it is certainly one of the most popular programs, and I probably get more questions and comments about Backyard Farmer than any other program that NET offers. Become a member tonight at the $84 level. That's $7 a month, and you can take the Backyard Gardening Toolkit as your thank you gift. That includes those 3 tools, a tote bag to take out into the garden with you to help your garden grow and thrive, or the Backyard Farmer Kneeling Pad Seat Cushion, or rain gauge, either one of them at the $45 level of membership. 1-800-989-8236 is the number to call right now, or you can go online to netnebraska.org/donate. Any donation is appreciated, but we also ask you not to give more than you can afford, but not to give less than you can afford, and only you know what that is. We choose not to preempt or interrupt Backyard Farmer very often, so it's important to pledge now during this last member drive of the fiscal year so that we know that this is a program that you value. Thank you.
All right, and on that note, get those checkbooks out. Or credit cards. Credit cards work better, or debit, whatever. I'm kind of old school. Checkbook.
Cash money.
Cash money. That works too. All right, so next picture comes to you, and this is pretty cool. This is egg clusters on a crabapple leaf. And this particular viewer said he thinks this is brown marmorated stink bug.
Yeah. So they do like crab apples. It would make sense that they might be attracted to that plant to try and lay their eggs on it. I tend to agree with the assessment that they're probably marmorated stink bugs. The only other option would maybe be a red humped caterpillar egg, but I'm not too sure how common those are in these parts. So I would reckon that he's right, that they are brown marmorated stink bug eggs. So we can see them all glued there to the plant. Brown marmorated is an invasive pest. It is something that can cause a lot of damage to peppers and corn and all kinds of things. I know that he's worried about the crabapple being damaged. So since they can see the eggs, I would encourage you to just go ahead and pluck that leaf off and throw it away, and then you won't have the problem anymore. If you do see some of the nymphs feeding in the tree later this season, maybe try a bifenthrin type spray or permethrin to protect that plant.
All right, thank you very much, Jonathan. Okay, buffalo grass, Bill.
Okie
And this and this is control. This particular viewer wants to control the brome and the clover in his buffalo grass. At one time, he had a really nice buffalo grass lawn. So what does he do here?
Well, fortunately, it's buffalo grass. Unfortunately, you really don't want to do anything until December. So those are perennials, and the buffalo grass will go dormant, and I guess maybe not December, but as soon as that buffalo grass has got a hard dormancy in the fall, you'd go out with a non-selective herbicide, and that's honestly going to be the most effective thing than trying to use something that's selective in season. So it may not look great now. There are some selective options, but honestly, your best bet is just try to deal with it, and that for now, and then clean it up with a non-selective herbicide once the buffalo grass is dormant in the fall.
All right, thanks, Bill. Okay, Lauren, this is a viewer from Omaha, West Omaha. She has a clematis that has developed this mottled yellow color on the foliage. And then I think we have another picture of one that's maybe about the same thing. This is a Lincoln clematis. And they want to know what it is and how it can be fixed.
When we talked a little bit about this before the show, but so many times clematis has yellow leaves like this, and I don't see evidence that this is necessarily a disease. I'm questioning if it's not with all the rain, excessive rain, maybe a fertility issue. Sometimes when we see discoloration at the bottom, it can indicate a root rot or something like that, and clematis does get wilts, and then there's some other diseases. But in this particular case, I'm not really seeing something that I would be too worried about a disease. I would just make sure that you've got adequate fertility and water.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Kelly, speaking of yellow, this is a Bennington viewer, 15-year-old river birch, yellowing leaves that are beginning to drop. Otherwise, it appears healthy. They are saying that even though this is Bennington, the soil pH is above 7.8.
Okay, wow, that's
Yeah.
not necessarily unusual for Nebraska, but that's even pretty high for Nebraska. And this river birch, we commonly see this. This is an iron chlorosis in the river birch. When you see the yellow leaves with the darker green veins, that indicates the iron chlorosis. And river birch is a native tree, so you think, well, it's adapted to our soils. but it isn't adapted to our urban soils where we maybe have basement excavation soil. It's compacted, and a lot of times we tend to overwater in our landscapes and the soil is too wet. So the pH as well as too wet of soils or compaction all contribute to this. pH over 7.8 is definitely the contributing factor, and then making it more worse yet, make sure your soil's not too wet. Maybe can't do a lot about compaction other than core aeration of the lawn. They could try doing a soil treatment with iron sulfur product. That's going to be slow acting. So and you really can't lower the pH. That's too difficult of a thing to do. So make sure you're not overwatering, and do a soil application of ferrous sulfate.
All right, and I think you have another picture, and this is actually a pin oak that is
right.
also yellow.
Right.
Only half of it.
Okay.
And half the tree has leaves and the other half does not. This is Grand Island, which I know also has some real soil issues. They want to know whether we can recommend anything to keep it alive, or is this one of Lauren's favorite things to do to a tree?
Especially with pin oaks, they keep leaves all year long.
The chainsaw treatment. So yes, well, pin oak is one of the oaks that we often see iron chlorosis in. So it is one of the oaks that we do not recommend planting in Nebraska. And when you have iron chlorosis and the leaves aren't as dark green as they should be, they're not photosynthesizing efficiently. So if you never treat it, provide iron to it, with pin oaks, a lot of times it's an injection treatment, and that does work. But if it goes too long, basically the tree kind of starves. It just doesn't have enough food production through photosynthesis. And it looks like almost half of that tree is already gone. So, the best option, it may be Lauren's option, the chainsaw method at ground level. And then, because you're always going to have trouble with a pin oak. It will always have iron chlorosis. You'll have to constantly treat it. So I would cut it down and replace it with a quality tree that's adaptable to our soil pH.
All right, and do that in the fall.
Yes, fall's a great time to plant.
Now. Not a good time,
And that will
necessarily.
drop leaves all at one time instead of all year long.
Well, that would not be most oaks, unfortunately. All right, I think we have a handful of questions that we can ask before we go to our next segment. This is an Emerson, Nebraska viewer, Jonathan, and under the bark of a tree, he saw these beautiful patterns.
Are we going to do an interpretive dance of it?
Sure, but I'm tethered, so you go right ahead and stand up.
The description of this in our dance reminds me most of a bark beetle or an engraver beetle. They do like to get under that dead wood, and then they kind of tunnel up the middle, and you'll see this almost explosion out the side of the feeding pattern, the larva under there. It looks kind of like a firework under the bark. So they're not causing the death of the tree or the branch. They're just taking advantage of the situation.
All right. So, Bill, a quick question for you too, which is, should yard clippings be bagged, or should you return them to?
We always want to return to the lawn. Even when it's really long, you can mow higher, that'd be fine. If you need to bag, don't put it in a compost, or put it in your compost pile or bed. Don't throw it out. But please just let your clippings lay. They break down quick. They're great fertilizer for your lawn.
All right,
Can
thanks,
you dance
Bill.
that out like we were doing?
Interpretive backyard farmer
Like
tonight.
maybe like this?
Well, because of the favorable weather we've been having, it really is already time to do a little bit of deadheading on those perennials. Let's take a few minutes to hear from Terry James at the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're again enjoying all of the color that we're seeing. The reds, the yellows, the greens are really starting to grow and show off in our garden. The one thing we're going to do this week, though, is a little bit of maintenance to kind of extend that and push some of those perennial flowers back to blooming. Some of our chrysanthemums that are perennials, we have cut back by about 1/3. And we've done some of that feather cutting. So as you can see in the plant, they're not all the same length and not kind of just hedge cut across. This is actually going to help prevent some of that flopping that we see in the fall and help push that flowering back a little bit by a couple weeks. We're also going through and deadheading all of our annual flowers to help give them another boost and just to keep that color blooming in our garden. So make sure that you're checking your garden, deadheading some of those annual flowers, going through some of those perennials that you know they're gonna flop. Cut them back by about 1/3 now, this time of year.
And make sure that you're cutting all the flowers off all of your herbs too. That really definitely helps keep them going also. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and see the color in our garden this week.
Thanks, Terry. It's always great to see everything growing and looking beautiful in our garden. And it is time for us to take a short break. And the deck is stacked.
Always
So,
is.
that's the advantage of being the host. All right, Kelly, this is an Ashland viewer who wants to know whether anything will grow under cedars at the drip line of those trees.
Not much. I mean, you can try the shade plants, but if like hostas and so on, but if those aren't growing, then just put a ring of mulch there.
All right. This is a Butler County viewer who had tomatoes that were planted and then they almost immediately shriveled. They're wondering, is this a soil issue?
It might be, make sure maybe like a pre-emergent herbicide. Well, that shouldn't hurt tomatoes, but you need to read the label. Again, with as wet as soils were, we didn't have wet wilt, but if they did it immediately, it's hard to say. I don't know.
So a viewer wants to know whether chemicals can be stored in a cool basement.
Yes, they can be, but again, when you want to put them, you always want to store pesticides where children, people cannot get at them. So just make sure sometimes a garage locked is ideal, but it can freeze in the garage, so that's an issue as well. A locked area.
All right. Selective deadheading of a shrub roses, will that promote rebloom?
Yes.
You forgot the lightning part.
I know, I didn't go fast enough.
All right, Lauren, are you ready?
I'm going to limit myself to 6-word answers tonight, so I hope you have a lot of questions.
Oh, brother, I'm going to make stuff up.
Yeah.
All right, this is a viewer who has Husker red penstemon that had the terrible leaf spot. Wonders, is there a treatment to avoid that next year?
Clean up residue. Don't overhead irrigate.
That's more than 6. All right. This is a viewer who has the fungal disease on peaches, on the leaves. Wonders what it is and is there anything they can do now?
Nothing now. Peach leaf curl, spray during the dormant time of year. I couldn't do that
That
one.
didn't last.
I was trying.
All right. Will fire blight spread from one crabapple to another?
Yes.
All right. This is a Unadilla viewer who has Amish paste and other heirloom tomatoes and is wondering, are they susceptible to leaf curl genetically, or is that a disease already?
Leaf curl.
This kind of stuff.
Oh, well, they're all susceptible, could be, depending on that rapid growth. I'm going to go off 6 on this. But the rapid growth, you could have to get the leaf curl. The other thing, when you have curl, is I'm going to extend this, you could be looking at a herbicide
Give it
drift.
up.
That was too hard.
Multiples of 6.
6 words,
Yeah.
it's a 6 sentence.
Yeah.
All right, Bill, are you ready?
I'll answer as needed.
All right. So a viewer saw a really good YouTube video on growing on buffalo grass and wonders, what is the herbicide that we use for weed control in buffalo grass?
You can use a lot of them. Just read the label. All labels will say what grasses they're safe on, and if it's not labeled for it, don't use it.
All right. This is a Blair viewer who thought she had clover in an area between her turf and her landscape. It's actually yellow wood sorrel. How does she control that?
Well, that's an area where you could do an application if you want, maybe later on in the season. So.
All right. Is a 4-inch mowing height too high?
No.
What is the best mulch to put over seed if you're on a pretty significant slope?
Anything that we can do to put on there would be fine. Be careful with the mulches that came from like a hay field because they have a lot of weed seed. We did a lot of research on that, and so you can get a lot of weeds in with your mulch. So sometimes these paper-based mulches can actually be better because they're sterile and clean.
All right. How do you control dog spot in your lawn?
Get rid of your dog. No, I mean, there's not a lot you can do. You can try to water it. You can try those things, but it's more than just the salt. There could be some herbicides that the dogs naturally make. They're not imbibed, that actually kill the grass. And there's an acid in the urine that can be herbicidal.
All right. That was not very helpful.
I gave the easiest answer,
we get
but
that
I
a
don't
lot.
agree. Yeah.
All right. Are you ready, Jonathan?
Oh, hang on. Okay.
Okay.
I'm ready now.
This is a viewer who has the fruit already set on their apricots, but wants to know, is there anything he can do to avoid the worms that get in there?
Yeah, after the fruit is set, kaolin clay, the surround wettable powder, will work for you.
All right. Are spittle bugs harmful?
No, they're interesting.
All right. How do you, this is a viewer who has the garden phlox and the leaves are all stippled.
Okay.
What is that and how do you control it?
Sounds like a phlox bug issue. You might try blasting them off with some water or maybe getting them with maybe a spinosad or a permethrin type product.
All right. A Bellevue viewer says there is a plethora of black ants this year.
There are a lot of ants this year. Agitated landscapes equal lots of ants. So they're just kind of out there. They're going to do lots of good things for you this year. As long as they're not in the house, don't worry about them.
All right. We have a viewer who sent a picture of a paper wasp nest and wondered whether the wasps will reuse it this year.
Nope, it's a one and done kind of situation.
All right. Bagworm bags are 1/4 of an inch long already. Is it too late to do any control or too early?
Nope, definitely get some BT down. That's the organic product of choice that'll help you to control those.
All right. We have a Kennesaw viewer who wonders, is there an organic pesticide to use for some sort of flies that are all over a euonymus in our landscape?
It has to be a pesticide.
Yeah.
The larva, maybe a BT type product for flies would work, but for the adults, it would be better to put out a fly trap.
Put the glasses back on.
Oh, put the,
That's a bright
Nice
trophy.
job. All right. All right, Kelly, what are the plants of the week for us?
Oh, let me get that up here. There's some great plants of the week right here. The red one is a red Maltese cross. Get a little close up here. And this is a very tough plant. It's blooming in the backyard farmer garden right now beautifully because I just took a bunch of pictures of it. Probably it was about 3 feet tall. It's a very tough plant. It'll grow under a lot of conditions, but once established, a good drought tolerant plant. Beautiful flat clusters of these red flowers. And the fluffy one beside it is a smoke tree. So it's the panicle of the smoke tree. When you see it from a distance, it looks smoky around the plant. And this is another hardy shrub, more of a shrub than a tree. And then there's the purple-leafed one, and there is the green-leafed one. And probably, but the only issue it seems like we see with this is verticillium wilt. So that only infects it if it gets very stressed.
All right, thanks, Kelly. And that is red and white in honor of N150 again.
That's
So
right.
here we go. All right, Jonathan, you get some pictures here. This is a viewer in northern Monona County, Iowa.
okay.
Looks like a good year for all sorts of fruits. Started on the strawberries and found, he's calling this guy a boarder, like somebody that has...
An unwanted border.
yeah.
Yeah, this looks like it's a sap beetle larva that's taken up residence in this strawberry. My best recommendation for that is to try and get rid of the over-ripened fruits as quickly as possible, and especially anything that's damaged. If you had any storm damage on your fruit, they're going to take advantage of that and lay their eggs in there. And then you're going to get a nasty surprise when you bite into it.
All right, and this, your second picture is actually a Blair viewer. Found a little creature here and has never seen one.
That is a tenebrionid larva. I contacted my buddy Mike Scavarla at Penn State. He's a good larval insect expert, and he helped me figure out that it wasn't a ground beetle, it's a type of darkling beetle, and they would be living under logs and things with those pill bugs that you see there.
All right, excellent. All right, Bill, so your next one, this is actually a viewer who is in Gering, and a weedy grass that they've been battling for years. So he's tried a whole bunch of different stuff, chemicals, something called speed zone, pendulum, whatever. What is this and what are we going to recommend?
Yeah, we look at this pretty close. From the pictures, it seems like it's nimblewill, which is a warm-season perennial weed. You have two options with warm-season perennials like this. One is non-selective control with like a Roundup or something similar like that. The other option is you can go out with products like Tenacity, or another one's called Pilex. They're very similar products. You treat now because the plant's weak out of winter, and you're gonna need to do like 3 applications. So if you have that issue and you want to go selective route, you know, the products can be expensive and hard to get, so you might consider hiring a lawn care company that might have those on hand to make those applications on the 2-week interval that's required.
All right.
For the Tenacity at least.
All right, thanks. All right, Lauren, your first picture here is a Daylily issue. She said this has been showing up for a couple years in a row now on one called Red Rum. She wonders if she needs to get rid of this one. It's happening on just this variety.
Yeah, and I looked at this closely, and it's not any of our common daylily diseases. I mean, it looks like it could be bacterial, but if she's not seen it on other ones, I do not know what that is, to be quite honest. It was a little rough, like it possibly slug injury at the base, but don't know what the disease is. If there's more interest in it, I'd recommend taking a sample and bringing it to the diagnostic lab or scanning it in.
And then your second picture here is actually Japanese tree lilac. She thought she maybe had burned this one with a campfire, but...
This one's really interesting. There are no viruses that have been described on Japanese tree lilac, which is what this looks like, or some sort of a photoinhibitor herbicide injury. If there's any chance of drift, if it's on one side of the tree, that's possible, that's where this would go. Not a disease that we're aware of any kind.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Kelly, this is a viewer who has tiger eye sumac.
Okay.
And planted it about 10 years ago. It is now trying to colonize his entire property. He wonders how to keep it from popping up in other places. He can mow it off in the lawn, but now it's showing up in other places as well.
Right, cutting it off, mowing it off, that's really the only options that you have for treating this is tiger eye. Sumacs naturally do this, and that's a great thing. If you plant them out in the wild, they grow on slopes or banks, they erosion control, so that's great. In our home landscape, not so much. And tiger eye is listed as one that doesn't aggressively sucker as much, but it will sucker. So mowing them off and clipping them off as they grow is really the best thing to do. There are some products that say they will stop suckers. They won't stop them. They might slow them down a little, but they will not stop them.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Well, unfortunately, parts of eastern Nebraska had some terrible hailstorms come through, and of course that can really take a toll on every plant that is green. Here's Scott Evans to give us some tips on nursing those hail-damaged plants back to health.
Some areas of the state this spring have been affected by hail. Some of those storms have been severe and damage has been done to the landscape. One of the first things that we need to do is check our trees for safety. Any broken or damaged limbs should be addressed immediately so they don't pose a problem down the road. If you need to get on a ladder or lift a chainsaw above your head, we do recommend that you call a certified arborist to help you with that job. As you start to move into the landscape, you want to make sure that all of your cutting tools are clean and sharp. This is going to make the job a little bit easier, and plants heal better from a clean cut versus a jagged cut. It's important to note that some of our plants could actually have a disease that we cannot see. So we would like for you to try to disinfect your pruners as you move from plant to plant. And you can use a 1 part bleach to 9 parts water solution to disinfect your cutting tools. Some of those diseases that we don't always see is Astor's yellow in the sunflower family and the Hosta X virus. When we start moving into the landscape, we need to look at the overall health of the plant. We want to try to keep as much leaf tissue intact for the plant to photosynthesize. This is going to aid in the recovery, and as the season progresses, you can slowly remove some of those broken or damaged leaves, or you can just leave them alone. Our trees and shrubs should be cleaned up, and we don't want to have any jagged edges or branches in the canopy. When we start to look at our vegetable garden, we want to ask ourselves, how patient are we? Tomatoes can make a quick recovery and start to regrow, but any damage that was done to the stem is a potential entry point for pathogens, so you may or may not want to replace those plants. Peppers, eggplants, and okra and other large leaf vegetables that have been stripped down to the stem, you may want to go ahead and replant those. We should have plenty of growing season ahead of us to get produce this summer. Our leafy greens, such as lettuce and spinach, we can actually replant those this August for a fall harvest, so that way we can enjoy that crop later on in the season. We want to help our plants. Our plants are stressed. It has been a stressful spring so far, but we should not fertilize our plants. Fertilizers can actually do more damage to the plant than good. But what we can do is make sure that the plants are properly mulched to help reduce weed competition, and when the rains stop, it will help with soil moisture retention. Hail can be damaging to the landscape, and it might be several years down the road before we know the true extent of that damage. But what we can do right now is gently clean up the garden, Exercise some patience and throw in a little bit of luck, our plants should make a full recovery.
You know, as with anything else like this, a little bit of patience is really going to be the best way to know what to do. And as Scott said, there is really plenty of time in this growing season to start at least some of those plants over again. You know, as I mentioned earlier, Backyard Farmer has enjoyed a very long history on NET. Our program is dedicated to helping you grow plants the right way, and we are fortunate to have a great partnership with NET and with you, our audience. So once again, let's hear about how you can support NET and keep shows like Backyard Farmer on the air.
Thanks, Kim. We are in June, which means that our fiscal year wraps up in just about 2 weeks, and we have a little bit of a funding gap. That is why we're on the air tonight asking for your support, for you to join the almost 28,000 people who are currently supporters of NET. For more than 60 years, Backyard Farmer on NET has come to your home to help you with all kinds of advice. Every episode, from spring to fall, the panel of Nebraska Extension experts deal with topics from pests and disease to turf problems, as well as landscape design and general horticulture topics. You can help us by providing financial support. That financial support ensures that great programs like Backyard Farmer keep coming to you. And when you become a supporter, we do have some thank you gifts at the $7 monthly level. We are now offering the new premium, the Backyard Farmer Gardening Toolkit. It includes a tote bag and 3 tools to help you make your garden grow and thrive. Or at the $45 level of membership, you can choose between the Backyard Farmer Kneeling Pad Seat Cushion or the Backyard Farmer Rain Gauge. 1-800-989-8236 is the number to call to join the 28,000 members of NET, or go online to netnebraska.org/donate. Way back in the early days of television, 1953 to be exact, Backyard Farmer began on NET, and that makes it the longest running program on public broadcasting. That's quite an honor.
That is pretty cool.
There's something about this that's actually pretty special.
Well, people want to know those good science-based answers. They want public television to deliver it. They want some fun thrown in just for good measure. And that's what we've done for all these years.
You may not know this, but I've worked at several public television stations, and 2 of them stole this idea in upstate New York and in Champaign, Illinois, and they gave grudging credit to NET for having created it, but in all cases, all of these stations have discovered what a fantastic format this is, although I must say this is the very best. This is the original.
Absolutely, we are the best, of course.
They are, because you do it with a sense of humor. You don't take yourselves too seriously, clearly.
Sometimes too clearly.
Do you crack yourselves up sometimes?
Yeah, unfortunately, people can't sometimes see what happens off camera.
In those breaks?
That can really get to be a little bit over the top. But it's fun.
It is fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. The lightning rounds, you know, I always learn a lot. Large part of the success of the program is the viewer interaction, and you provide every opportunity. With email, you must have really increased. It's so easy to send off a picture to you now.
Well, and thank heavens that we do have the pictures, because it is very difficult sometimes to give a good answer to a question if you can't see it. You know, the description, the way we need it, is not necessarily going to work unless we have that good picture.
And for the viewers too.
Absolutely.
You're not just talking about a concept. You can see the scab, scabbing,
Sure.
scaling, any of those terms.
Right, all those terms.
It is the final month of our fiscal year. Why does that matter? Well, because we have a little bit of a gap. We have not quite reached our goal for the year, and this is your last opportunity in this fiscal year to support Backyard Farmer and help us to wrap up this year's membership goals successfully. A reminder, we've got all of those great thank you gifts that you can take to celebrate your support of Backyard Farmer, but most importantly, you're supporting something that comes into your home every single Thursday night during the growing season, an hour every week where you can get your questions answered or hear the answers to everyone else's question. It's a very, very popular program. We would love to have every viewer tonight become a member. If you can do that, if this is the night that you're going to become a member of NET, dial 1-800-989-8236 or go to the online website, netnebraska.org/donate. And if you become a sustainer, you have the ease of automatic renewal and automatic payment from your bank account or credit card. That means your membership will never lapse unless you want to cancel it. You can pick the amount to donate, but dial now, 1-800-989-8236. Thank you.
All righty, so on that note, donate. You get the next pictures, and this is I have found these underground all over my yard. Do you know what they are, and are they harmful? This is a Hebron viewer.
Okay.
So what do we think this particular thing is?
That looks like a May-June beetle there. Pretty common insect at this time of year in that May-June interface. They're a grub under the soil. The adult can cause some damage. Kelly was sharing with me that she's had a lot of questions about a huge number of them out in the Columbus area. They are attracted to lights, so if you turn out your porch lights or change those bulbs out to a less insect attractive type bulb like an LED, you should see fewer of them. You can also set up a white bucket with soapy water near plants that you want to protect so they don't feed on it. They'll dive down into the bucket.
All right. And then we also have a simple one, which is, what is this moth? And this is garland.
Okay, this is a 5-spotted sphinx moth. If it were to lift up its wings, you would see the 5 spots down the side of the body there. It's probably more famous for being called the tomato hornworm moth, though. So it is the big green worm that sometimes attacks your tomato plants. And I identified this one by those hair swirls on its back. Maybe some of our viewers can relate to that. Can they swirl their hair on their back into those big circles like that?
Oh, brother. All right, Bill, you have a couple of pictures here.
Yep.
The first is one that we've been seeing a lot, which is maple seedlings coming up everywhere in the yard. Should a pre-emerge have kept them from sprouting, and what do they do now?
A pre-emerge won't, because the pre-emergents work on our grasses, and so that's not going to help there. If they're small enough that you can mow, you're going to mow off the growing point, and it's just going to die. Some herbicides can work. I do wonder about, looking at the label to see if it's legal for that, and so just always read your labels with your herbicides. They are the law.
Okay, and your second picture actually is an odd one with color issues in the lawn, which is West Omaha.
Yep.
12 years old. What do we think that probably was?
I don't think it's a fertility issue. I think it's really just that there's 2 different cultivars with 2 different species, an older and a newer. And so if you don't agree with me, you'll send a sample in. But from the angle of this picture, it just looks like 2 different grasses, one that's just got a little darker genetic color than the other one does.
All right, thanks, Bill. Lauren, this is a raspberry patch issue for you. Started 3 years ago. It's been very productive and healthy, but old canes came out, and then he started to see some deterioration of a few plants, which is now spreading very quickly. Sent a number of pictures, which are the old canes, the new canes, and then you can see as we move through the ABC here what's happening on the top. What do you think?
As you can see the stressed growth or the discolored growth and then dying like this, and then there's a picture here with a stem. So I think it's a good possibility that this is one of our bramble cane diseases, anthracnose. Recommendation on it would be to prune out any of the older canes to reduce inoculum if it is a second year bearing fruit.
All right,
For sure.
Thanks, Lauren. This is a Shadron viewer, Kelly, for your last picture. 8 pines that were planted 2 years ago in the pasture. This particular one is 20 inches tall. You can see the measure in there. She just noticed that the roots appear to be circling on this, and is there anything they can or should do now?
Okay, well, you can cut that circling root. It's probably a girdling root, and on that small of a plant, I'm going to assume it was bare root planted, so just a reminder to people to not plant too deep and make sure those roots get spread out, because they'll keep growing the direction they're facing. So you can cut this, make sure you cut it at a point where that root is growing outward and won't keep circling, or that small of a plant, you may want to replace it.
All right.
Start with a new one that won't have that issue.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Well, we always have announcements of really great things happening in the gardening world. So let's start with the Nebraska Lectures, Growing Campus Landscapes at the University of Nebraska. That is Wednesday the 19th at 3:30 in Love Library Auditorium on City Campus in Lincoln. Our second announcement is the Nebraska Daylily Society Bare Root Plant Sale, Omaha Marriott, and that is actually in July, so you can get all geared up for that one. And our third announcement, of course, is Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer, which you can watch on Facebook Sundays at 6:30 p.m. And that is just a way cool thing. This week we have our turf guys on there and our bug guy talking about that together in the same...
Happily.
Happily talking together about that. All right, so we have, I think, a little bit of time, like a minute or so.
I'll be fast.
This is a Bellevue viewer with Black Hill spruce, 6 feet of planting in 2015. They're now 12 feet. Dark needles toward the trunk. New growth is green. Saw some webbing, but is that normal this time of year and in that location? Or do we really need a little bit more info or a picture on that?
I think a picture would be more helpful with that. What do you think, Kelly?
Unless it's spruce needle miner on the interior, but not the right time of the year.
I don't think that would
So-
be.
Picture.
Yeah, picture would definitely
Picture.
help with that one.
1,000 words,
Yep.
not 6 words, Lauren. Okay. Sorry. All right, Bill, we have like 40 seconds or something like that.
Okay.
So this is a viewer who has weeds and had sod put down and is seeing what looks like bindweed coming in between. How can that be controlled in a new lawn?
Oh, bindweed is one of those weeds that I deal with too, all on my landscape. In the lawn, though, fortunately, it's kind of weird, but the stuff that controls crabgrass, which is drive or quinclorac, actually can kill bindweed. And so you can use the crabgrass killer on the bindweed, and it's one of the few broadleaf weeds that will be affected, and so you can control it that way.
All right, and we have time for a 6-word answer, which is spots on red twig dogwood on the canes, killing the canes, are probably what?
Cytospora canker, prune out the affected areas 7 inches below, more than 6 inches, but a good quality answer.
All right, thank you, Lauren.